Hey there, welcome to Escape from the Matrix. I'm your host Arcturus, astral projection shaman, author, and your guide on this journey beyond the physical world, exploring consciousness, navigating other dimensions, and uncovering the hidden truths of existence. This podcast is an invitation, an open door to a world that, until now, you've probably only heard of in stories. A world of limitless potential, hidden dimensions, and mind-expanding experiences. If you've ever felt like there's more to existence than what we've been taught, you are in the right place. Since this is our first episode, I want to start by introducing myself. Not just by telling you who I am, but by sharing how I got here. How I stepped beyond the boundaries of the physical and into the unknown. So, a little about me. I was born in Mexico, and ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with one question: what's beyond this world? I don't know if you've ever asked yourself this: what's beyond space? Where does it end? Where is heaven? Where is God? You know, I grew up in a Catholic school where the teachers and priests would talk about God, heaven, and hell. Though, honestly, I think they mostly talked about hell. I think it was some sort of fear-based education in some level. And everything about creation was wrapped in mystery. And also I could tell they didn't have the answers I was looking for. They were perhaps too afraid to explore the unknown for themselves, I figured. Then one day I came across something in my school's science book that really stuck with me. It said human life consists of 5 stages. We are born, we grow up, we reproduce, we age, and we die. And that was about it. That was life according to the book. Even as a kid, that felt so empty. Like life was just a repetitive cycle to keep the system running. And I just couldn't accept that, you know? There had to be more. So, as a kid, I spent hours lost in my imagination, diving into comic books, UFO magazines, books about magic, ghosts, and psychic powers. I was fascinated by all of it. But despite how much I read, I had never actually experienced anything supernatural myself. You know what I mean? It's like I believed in these things. I tried learning about psychic abilities and magic, but nothing really worked for me. I even bought a Ouija board once, and guess what? Nothing. So for a long time, I didn't have any real first-hand experiences with the metaphysical. Then one day, my mom told me a story that changed everything. She told me that when she was a little girl, she and her sister had this strange game. They would basically take turns locking themselves in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet seat and repeating the phrase, "I am that I am, I am that I am," over and over again. And then something happened, something extraordinary. My mom said that she felt herself leaving her body, floating unseen through the house while everything carried on as normal. And her sister could do it too. They were scared about this experience, but also fascinated, you see. Until one day they told my grandmother, and you know, she was like the classical grandmother from times where everything that didn't have an answer was a reason to be afraid of, and she told them to stop doing this experiment. And she said that it was probably dangerous, and just like that, they never tried again. But that story actually fascinated me. I had to try to do it too, naturally, so I did. I would go to the bathroom and lock up the door and try to do the same phrase, but nothing happened. So eventually I moved on, but something had already started shifting inside me. Something that would eventually lead me to experience the real thing. And it all started with my nightmares. You see, like a lot of kids, I had recurrent nightmares. Monsters chasing me, trying to tear me apart, the usual. But one night, I discovered a way to escape. In my dream, I forced myself to open my eyes, my real physical eyes, and suddenly, actually, I was able to open my physical eyes and I woke up. So I started using this technique over and over, training myself to wake up whenever I wanted, whenever I was having a nightmare. But then something weird happened. One night after escaping a nightmare, I opened my eyes and saw my room, but I couldn't move. My body was completely paralyzed. I struggled, panicking until I lost consciousness and fell back into a dream. And this kept happening in different occasions at night, and I had no idea what it was. At the time, I actually thought it might be some kind of demonic possession. Then one day in college, I finally learned the truth about these experiences. I was studying in France back then as an exchange student. It was in college, it was university. And I was traveling with friends on a trip to Avignon, a very nice city in France. And we stayed in a hotel and we rented a room for ourselves. We were like 4 people or 5 people, and we slept all together in one room. And while I started dreaming, I had a nightmare, and it was a weird nightmare. And this is not necessarily associated with astral travel. I mean, I've never had anything like that afterwards, but it was a nightmare in which I was in a forest, and I had been captured by evil gnomes with like big fingernails, and I was bound, I was chained, and I couldn't move, and so it was quite scary, and so I tried to wake myself up the way I normally do, like I was telling you, by trying to open my eyelids, my physical eyelids, and it worked. And again, I certainly saw the room, and everything was dark because it was nighttime, obviously. But I couldn't move, and I could see the room, and it was very scary. So I started to cry out for help, but I couldn't articulate my lips, and so I mumbled, and I struggled like that for a while, and then eventually I guess I lost consciousness. I fell back asleep, and the next day I woke up, and one of my friends, who was a girl, she was telling me, "Hey, I think you were having one of those erotic dreams because I heard you trying to say something," or I don't know, something like that, she told me. And I was ashamed, and I told her, no, the reason why I was making those noises is because I was calling for help, because I was having this nightmare where I was bound, and then when I woke up, it's like I couldn't move my body, and it felt horrible. I sometimes think that it's some sort of demonic possession, I told her. And she told me, "Oh yeah, I actually know what you're talking about." And I was like, "Really?" And she's like, yeah. The same thing used to happen to me, and that's why I try not to sleep on my back, because when I sleep on my back, for some reason that happens. And I think that's what people call astral projection. And so you see, the moment she mentioned the word astral projection, those words changed everything. I started thinking back about the experiments that my mom and my aunt used to do when they were children. And I think I had also read about astral projection, and I just, I thought it was fascinating. And then I thought to myself, well, this could be like the very first time when I could have a metaphysical phenomena. So I became obsessed with learning more. But this was in the early 2000s, and back then, information on astral projection was hard to find, especially in Spanish. The internet wasn't that developed back then, especially in the Spanish-speaking world. And then, by pure chance, looking on the internet, in English actually, because I could speak English, I stumbled onto this website that had like mystical knowledge, and it had one technique for astral travel and certain instructions, and it involved using an ancient mantra. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like mantras are like powerful ancient words that are used to activate the chakras, the energy points in our physical body. And so apparently different mantras have different effects on the body, and this mantra in particular help to have out-of-body experiences. So the idea was simple. I was to repeat the mantra when drifting off to sleep, and let it shift my consciousness to detach myself from my physical body. And they explained to me that there was something called the astral body that was different from the physical body, and that was what was going to come out of my physical body, and not necessarily the soul, right? Actually, the soul is a very complicated topic that, I could discuss it in another occasion. So we were talking about exiting the physical body on the astral body, and that was what it was about. So one day, immediately after reading about the technique, I remember I went to the gym, I worked out, and then I went to have a nap. And when I was having the nap, I thought it was a good chance to try the technique. So I started laying on my back, and I started to repeat the mantra, and I was falling asleep slowly, but I kept focusing on the mantra, and suddenly I started feeling this tingling sensation all over my body, and it was some sort of electric tingling sensation. And to be honest, that was just it was pretty cool, because it was something different, something that I had never experienced before, and it was also telling me like there's definitely something metaphysical happening here, right? So I kept doing the mantra and feeling the tingling sensations until I blacked out. I fell asleep. And after some moments, I started dreaming, and it was a very unusual dream. And when you start dreaming, you sort of forget what you were doing before, and you also don't know that you're dreaming. You're not very conscious about it. You're not very lucid about it. And in this dream, I was in a park, and I saw my brother when he was young, when he was a kid, and I also was a kid. And my brother was holding a wand or a staff, like a wizard's wand, let's say. And I remember I looked at it, and it had like a magnetic feel to it. Like, what is that? And then my brother gave it to me. I think he said something like, now the power belongs to you, or something like that. And so I held the wand, and the moment I held it in my hands, I felt like a pull. Like I was like a rocket skyrocketing to the sky. Like I could feel this vertigo, this sensation, and it was overwhelming. And suddenly, boom, I was I was awake. I was no longer dreaming, but I was near the ceiling. I was like floating near the ceiling, and I couldn't feel my body. I mean, I was just like some sort of consciousness or vision, just floating near the ceiling. And I remember I looked down and I saw my physical body sleeping. And the weird thing is that I also saw this cord, like this silver glowing cord, uniting me, like this consciousness with the physical body. And so I knew what it was because I had read about it. I had read about the silver cord. That is a cord that unites our physical body with all of our different bodies of existence, and basically means that the only way in which you can die is if this cord gets cut off. But the instructions that I read said that astral projection was perfectly safe and that this would never get cut off unless it was your time to die, basically. And so I was just floating there, looking at my physical body, just sleeping. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I made it. It worked. I immediately knew. And so I thought like, okay, what should I do first? And then I looked at the window and I was like, okay, perhaps I'm going to come outside and start floating over the city. And so that's what I tried to do. And so I floated towards the window, and I remember that I touched the window with, I don't know how to say it, I just felt like I had like astral hands, and this is something I will talk about more later. But let's say I had like hands, and I touched the window, the glass, and it felt cold because it was cold outside, so I could feel it. It was weird, like I could feel the cold from outside, and I could also hear the noises of the cars, the traffic. And I tried to pass through because, I just thought like that was perfectly possible to go through objects in the astral plane. And so I tried to go through, and it didn't work. I felt like a resistance. And then I was pulled back to my physical body. And in that moment was like waking up from a dream. And then I just felt like that. Like I felt like I woke up. But I immediately knew that something had happened. That it was not just my imagination, that I had not dreamed it. I mean, probably the part where I talk about the wand and everything, that was a dream. But the part where I was floating and I could see my physical body just lying there was not part of the dream. That was the astral experience. At that moment, I knew, without a doubt, that the world was not what we had been told. And that's what this podcast is about. I'm here to share my journey with you, not just my experiences, but the techniques, the knowledge, and the wisdom that can help you experience this for yourself. Because this world is just one layer of reality. There's so much more beyond the veil waiting to be explored. This is just the beginning. In future episodes, we'll go even deeper into astral projection, the hidden truths of existence, and how to break free from the illusion of the material world. If you've ever wondered about the mysteries of the universe, I invite you to uncover them with me. I'm Arcturus. Until next time, if you want to find out more about astral projection, visit escapefromthematrix.com.